Welcome to a special edition of Musings. It's not Monday, and I'm not talking about taking a look back at a book that I published a long time ago. I'm talking about a book that is brand new. The Lost City came out on Tuesday. The Lost City is the first book in the Omte Origins. If you're unfamiliar, the Omte Origins is my new spin-off series from the world of the Trylle and Kanin. Just be forewarned, there may be spoilers in this video about the Trylle and Kanin Chronicles. I'm not going to try to. I won't give any spoilers about the Lost City or the Omte Origins because it's brand new, so that would be pretty rude. But I might do some spoilers for the Trylle or the Kanin Chronicles. But considering basically all of the Omte Origins is one big spoiler for the true series, it's just kind of how it will work out. So the Trylle trilogy follows Wendy Everly, who finds out that she was a changeling, and that means she was switched at birth. And then she thought she was a human, and she discovers that she's really a troll from a tribe called the Trylle, and then she comes back and adjusts to that. The Kanin Chronicles, which takes place 5 years after the Trylle trilogy, follows Bryn Avon, who lives with the Kanin kingdom. She herself is Kanin and Skoyara. Bryn is a guard, and so she wasn't a changeling. She's a guard. She's kind of like a bit of an underling in the caste system there, and so she grew up in the world and she's familiar with it. And so those are the two main trilogies before this, and this one, the Omte Origins, is about Oola. Oola is actually first introduced as a small character in the third book of the Kanin Chronicles. She's a 14-year-old who lives in an isolated town that Bryn Avon kind of runs into when Bryn's trying to track some things down. And Oola had been abandoned as a baby and raised by the innkeepers, and they were relatively kind to her. She had kind of a mediocre childhood. She had been isolated in this tiny Kanin village up in the Arctic for, her whole life, and so she wants to come down to the southern cities and find her family. And so she kind of hitches a ride with Bryn and ends up in Fjorning, and ends up staying with Finn Holmes. And Finn is probably one of the characters that is the biggest connective tissue between the three books. He is Wendy's tracker in the first series, and he helps bring her back. He's also initially Wendy's love interest, so that and he helps show her things about the Trylle. In the Kanin Chronicles, his younger sister Ember is best friends with Bryn, and so his relationship with Ember brings him in to help Bryn with some different things, and that's actually how Oola comes into the picture. Finn at that time has a bunch of kids, and Oola has no place to stay, and so they kind of invite her to stay with them to help watch the kids and to give her a home, because Oola doesn't actually have a home really. So Finn and his family basically end up fostering her. I mean, she's helping them out too, and they're helping her out, and I think it's a mutually beneficial situation, and they really come to love each other over the time that she's with him. And so she's been with them for the past 5 years at the beginning of the Omte Origins, and now she's 19 years old, and she wants to make her way in the world, and she wants to figure out who she is and kind of figure out what she wants to do with her life. She's liked her time with Finn and his family, but she doesn't want to be a nanny her whole life. If there's anything wrong with that, some people do want to do it. That's just not what Oola wants. I definitely tried to make Oola's world as diverse as I could. With the way that I set up the kind of, race of the tribes, I did kind of limit myself in how racially diverse the world can be, because it is a very closed world, and they try to really shut out anyone that's not them, that's not their tribe, or not like them. With different, there are multiple characters with different sexualities. There's gay characters and bisexual characters, asexual characters, transgender characters. So I really did try to, because I feel like even though I set up the rules in the world that the races are very defined, they still have a lot of different sexualities, and there's also different disabilities. And so I tried to look at the disabilities in different ways too. One thing, and I don't know how well it will come through in just the first book, but it is something that I cover over the course of the 3 books. I don't think this counts as a spoiler at all, but just there are things that Wendy and Bryn say are the way things are, especially with other tribes, and things that they say about particularly the Omte, but really any tribe, the Vitra, the Skoyara, any other tribes, that might not actually be true. Because Oola in this book is now runs into things that she's been told are a certain way, that the Omte are a certain way, that the Vitra are a certain way, and that's because she's lived in a Trylle society and in a Kanin. She's never lived with the Omte. And so she's only been told about this other tribe from people who aren't a part of that tribe. And so some of the things that they say and think might be a little biased. They might be prejudiced and they don't know. And that is one of the things that we explore in this book, that that the things that Oola has taught, and even the things that you, the reader, and the people have been taught aren't necessarily true, that you still have to, that even Wendy and Bryn, who I think are, good-hearted and trying to be good and trying to do the right thing, they don't know they have the biases they have. That's kind of the whole point. And so some of the stuff with the Omte and the hobgoblins that Oola explores, kind of it challenges things that have already, that may feel like established rules, but they weren't meant to. I wrote it this way to showcase the kind of unknown prejudices that people have, and that affects in different ways. And Oola has to come up against a lot of that because she has a noticeably different physical appearance. She does have she's a little bigger, like she's a little taller and broader shouldered. Her eyes are two different sizes, and her face is slightly lopsided. But I mean, I still think, and just to be clear, I think that she has these things, and I also think that she is beautiful. I think that both things can be true. The cover model for Oola on The Lost City, which you can see there, she is beautiful. But when we specifically look for the cover model, I said that I only wanted half her face shown because I figured it would be hard to kind of show the asymmetry in it. Because how I had described Oola, when they asked, they said, whenever we do covers, they're like, are there any actors or actresses that you could imagine playing, your characters? So just kind of give an idea of what you're thinking for a cover model. And what I had pitched Oola as is a plus size Chloe Moretz, and Chloe Grace Moretz. When I think that she's really beautiful. I was looking for with Oola's face, even though it's not exactly right. It's kind of like I don't have like an asymmetrical person in mind, because I don't even know how to like search for that, honestly. I think that I have some asymmetry in my face, and a lot of people do have asymmetry in their face, actually. So I do think Oola is beautiful, but I think that that's kind of the idea, that it's challenging the idea of beauty and what you've been told, because if you say those things, it doesn't sound beautiful. But I think that the girl on the cover is still a good representation of Oola, and she is very beautiful, and that was kind of my point. Maybe I'll do a trigger warning and say I'm just going to be talking a little bit about weight and body image. I'm not trying to make anyone feel bad or anything, but I just think you should know if that's something you're not comfortable with, I'm going to talk about it. So I've always been overweight, and I didn't usually write plus size heroines, especially when I was younger and I had a fantasy. In those fantasies, I wasn't fat, so my heroines weren't fat. And I use the word fat because that's the word that I'm comfortable with. Lots of people have different mixed feelings on it. I don't think it's a negative word. I think I'm 5'4", so I'm short. I'm Caucasian, so I'm white. I'm overweight, so I'm fat. It doesn't bother me. If it bothers you, I'm sorry, I don't know. I mean, I'm just saying, I don't mean it in a negative way. There's no negative to it. It's just like fact. Like, okay, here's a movie that I like, but it's problematic in some ways, and so I'm going to touch on it just because it's a good example. Like The Devil Wears Prada. They make this big deal about like Andy, played by Anne Hathaway, being fat when she's clearly just very thin and healthy, like in a healthy way thin. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not, and I didn't want to do that rom-com trope where she's a mousy girl who thinks she's fat, but she's not fat. She's just, because the actress playing her isn't, so she never was. And then also she has to lose weight and look hotter to be better and have value. That's also the other trope, is there's like a makeover and you're hot and you get thin, and I didn't want those tropes either. And so I don't know. I just kind of avoided talking about the weight of my main characters and let you put in whatever you guys wanted. I would say I was more specific with both Wendy and Bryn's weight, and with Bryn, because Bryn is also very, very, very athletic. Like, she works out all the time, and that's a big part of like who she is, because she wants to beat people up, basically. So Bryn is an athlete, and so she's built like an athlete, and so her weight is important to her role there. And Wendy, I think I very much I did want it to be a very with Wendy. I did want it to be a very stereotypical kind of princess story, and so I did picture her as a very like beautiful kind of Disney princess, and so that, I mean, that is. And Disney princesses are usually petite, so there's nothing wrong with being thin and beautiful either. It's just if only heroines are thin and beautiful, it becomes like a problem. And so with Oola, she just is, and Oola just is plus size. That's it. I don't think it's a spoiler to say she does not lose weight. She does not get a makeover like the whole series. I mean, there are times where she gets dolled up and times where she gets roughed up, and so like I'm not saying her appearance is like consistently like, you know, a 10 every day. There's ups and downs and things, but she's not going to get a makeover. No one thinks, you know, the cute boys don't notice her until like she's fine the way she is. I think that she's overweight, and that's just who she is. Kind of an interesting thing, because I'm doing like one of my last touches on the last book as I'm doing the launch for this one. So I'm kind of, you know, as you're saying hello to it, I'm saying goodbye. And so it's been kind of a weird, interesting thing. I think once I have all 3 books out, though, I might do like a long video and kind of like talk about all the Easter eggs and references, because I think I did like a ton of stuff, and I don't know if all of it will be picked up on. I also want to say that it is called the Omte Origins for a reason. We didn't just pick it because it's alliterative, even though that has been kind of like my thing, you know, Kanin Chronicles, trilogy. But I really wanted to kind of look back. This is going to be my last arc in the world, and so it really is like about, it goes back into looking at the history, and because what I was thinking a lot about when it came to this is where did this come from? How did it get here? And where is it going to go from here? Like, how are these? Because I've written, you know, there's been struggles within the kingdoms, and they're feeling some strife, and so it's kind of like, where are they going to go forward? And then that's where the names of that's what the last book is called, The Ever After, too, because it's what is the Ever After going to look like for these trolls. And this is actually kind of a hard video to do, because I wrote the books so close together, and they're also coming out so close together. Like, you know, I mean, The Lost City is out now. The Morning Flower's out August 4th, which is less than a month away. And the final book's out January 5th, which is less than 6 months away. So it's all like relatively fast, and I wrote them back to back, then they're all like written now. And so I know stuff, and I know where the story goes, and it's kind of hard to talk about it, though, because like I can't remember exactly where stuff comes up, and I don't want to give any spoilers. One of the big inspirations for the original trilogy were fairy tales that I liked, and children's stories. And you'll definitely see that as like a reoccurring theme, that fairy tales and folk tales and stuff is a reoccurring theme as in the Omte Origins. But one of the stories that inspired the trilogy a little bit was Peter Pan. You know, obviously Wendy's name is Wendy, and it's not like like if you're looking for a one-for-one interpretation, you will be sadly disappointed. I mean, it's more of like an inspiration of that kind of like magical feeling the world gave, as opposed to a literal one. But I will say with the Omte Origins, because of that, I decided to look back at Peter Pan and infuse it a bit more into the story. So I mean, I think if you're looking, there's definitely references of things, and that might give you a hint. Color is always kind of meaningful in my books and in these worlds and everything. Well, in most, I mean, it's color, it's meaningful. But I did put a special emphasis in color in this series. I really wrote out, there's different colors for different characters, for moods, for feelings. There's a really, so pay attention to color. If it seems like I'm talking about it, I'm kind of use it to bookmark things and hint at things to come. So the use of color, and even in the sketches and stuff that I've done too, there's a lot of like little meaningful hints about the characters and where they're going. So I just want to thank everyone for making the Lost City's first few days so good. Everyone has been, you know, so supportive, and I've been so excited seeing copies of The Lost City out in the wild, and I appreciate that. And it seems like so many of you are really enjoying it, and I am very excited for you guys to keep reading the Omte Origins, and I can't wait to talk to you guys all about it when all 3 books are out. But until then, I just want to say thank you. I hope that you're staying safe and having fun this summer, and I will.